Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to week 2 of policing. And during this module, what we're going to be focusing primarily on is police strategy. All right. Now, one of the things I want to tell you about police strategy is this is very much the flavor of the year kind of club. Policing strategies go in and out of favor. Some strategies that were popular 10 years ago are not popular today. And then strategies that may have been popular 100 years ago get remade and redone. Uh, uh, One of the reasons why we always see the strategy evolving is, first of all, crime evolves. So we have to give strategy, we have to take a look at that. But there's also no one golden rule on how to police a community. Each community is different and each community has its own specific needs. What, similar to criminological theory though, what police strategy does is try to give guidelines and how a community and how what strategies can be used to properly police a community. All right. Now, one thing I also do want to point out is that a lot of these strategies look really good on paper, but when you actually put them into action, you find that there are a lot of problems. And as in the case of criminological theory, we find the people that invent these strategies are not the people that are implementing them and putting them into action. So as we do that, just keep this in mind as a bit of a backdrop as we go forward. Okay, probably I would argue the most popular policing strategy that we currently have is something called broken windows. Broken windows theory is actually based on an article that was published in 1994 in the Atlantic Monthly magazine by James Wilson and William Kelly. And the strategy goes something like this. Is what we need to do in a community is to keep a community in a situation that we don't create an environment that nurtures crime. And it's based on the example of a broken window. It says that if a building has a broken window and that window is fixed immediately, that broken window has very little impact on a community. However, if we fail to fix that broken window, there are chances that there will be another broken window. And if we keep ignoring these broken window after broken window after broken window, eventually we get to a place where all the windows are broken, and then we start seeing structures devolve. And they take this analogy and actually more of a metaphor and put it into policing. All right? And the way that they put this strategy into policing is that police should very vigorously enforce small infractions of the law, the broken window, to ensure that we don't have more broken windows and that a community doesn't evolve into a high crime community. Now, there's a number of results that have come of broken windows, the two of which tend to be traffic stops, where police will stop people for a minor traffic violation and use that violation as possibly a mechanism to try to find a bigger violation, and then enforcing smaller traffic violations allows police to stop bigger crime from happening. In cities such as New York, and this is where this strategy became very controversial, where people don't drive cars and traffic stops could not be used as a way of entering into policing, they used a strategy called stop and frisk, where people that appeared to be suspicious, could just be stopped and frisked to see if they're committing crime. Now, the problem that occurred was that, yes, we all probably would like to look at suspicious individuals and don't want suspicious individuals in a neighborhood, but the definition of suspicious individual tended to be disproportionately black and people of color, and disproportionately youth. As a result, policing ended up being focused in communities that had high levels of poverty and high levels of people of color. And rather than stopping crime, what the net result ended up in these communities building a resentment of the police and hindering cooperation between the police and the general public. Another strategy that's been used is something that's called CompStat. Now, CompStat is based on geomapping, And what happens is with the use of mapping, and we talked about the computer and how it became a very valuable tool in the last module, all right? And is what it does is it allows police to see where crime is happening. And then they position officers to where crime is occurring in the hope of stopping crime in that area. And then if crime instead moves to another neighborhood, the geomapping allows officers to track that. By and large, CompStat is data-driven and is very uncontroversial. Problem comes is people don't always act on the data. The biggest criticism is that CompStat can be used to enforce political priorities based on types of crime that tend to be popular at the moment, or that people in power want to put their focus on. The next thing I'm going to talk about is community policing. And community policing, again, is a strategy that looks really, really great on paper. The premise of community policing is that officers have become too divorced from their community because of squad cars. So as a result, they need to become community partners, and rather than police a community, become embedded in that community so that they can effectively protect that community because they know how the community works, what's important and what's not. Things that are encouraged in community policing, again, is getting out of the squad car and walking around the neighborhood. And things like, and this is a picture here of a police officer that's involved with a Little League team. A police officer getting involved in a community where they're a mentor and a teacher more than a law enforcement officer is one of the hallmarks of community policing. Part of this involves allowing the community to have a voice. By working with officers and everyone working together as one, the thought process is that officers and community members will come together on a jointly agreed crime fighting strategy, all right, that protects public safety. And again, this is something that sounds really great on paper, but as we've tried to implement it, we've had some roles with it. One of the biggest problems that comes up is community partnerships don't mold well with the management style of police. Most police forces are set up as a top-down and they have a military structure. As a matter of fact, a substantial number of police officers are former members of the military that are used to this top-down structure. All right? As a result, police are used to taking orders. And where this creates problem is when the orders that are being given from above disagree from what the community says that it wants for policing. Then what do? And policing, just by its very nature, because it is law enforcement, and can come at a risk to officer, and often does come at a risk to officer life, building partnerships on what the community sees as a problem, as opposed to what officers see as a problem, can be problematic. And as a result, many of these partnerships have become difficult and have become contentious. And while there are a few examples where community policing effectively works, what has to transpire for community policing to be effective is a complete change in policing culture, and that's something we don't always see like we would like. Proactive policing. This is a modified form. I would actually call it a kind of a mix of broken windows and community policing. All right? The goal of community policing is to stop crime before it starts. All right? And the way that we do that is rather than waiting for a crime to be obvious, we look to stop crime by curing the symptoms. Probably the best example of proactive policing is a DUI checkpoint. Rather than an officer looking for somebody to drive wrong, we set up a checkpoint so that we don't need to wait for the bad action to happen. We can just catch it with the DUI. Also, similar to broken windows policing, we see a lot of focus here on ticketing and minor infractions. And again, the goal is by doing that we stop, like a broken windows goal, crime from fermenting and getting stronger. Here are the issues. And there are, similar to community policing, we see a lot of resentment, and people often feel profiled. Also, due to the nature of production measures, and probably the best example of this is in Ferguson, Missouri, which we talk about in other courses. But when we use proactive policing, the measure of production tends to be either arrests or traffic tickets. And officers that don't have the desired number of arrests or traffic tickets are thought to not be doing their jobs and can possibly limit their promotion or even performance evaluations. And as a result, in what we see happening in Ferguson, where when you have an environment like this, you see officers arresting people and giving tickets to people where it otherwise wouldn't happen. And instead of stopping crime, what we're getting instead is resentment toward police. With that, I hope you found this interesting, and I look forward to seeing you in week 3.